Hi, AppSec engineers. In this video, I'm going to be looking at a topic that doesn't get nearly as much attention as I think it should, and that is the great AppSec divide. Let's get started, and let's get started now. So, AppSec engineers, in this video, I'm going to be talking about something called the AppSec divide. And this is something that you might have noticed in different roles that you've been in security, but I think you've probably noticed in a more pronounced way if you're a CISO or if you're an AppSec manager, information security manager, or somebody in the product security space. You've probably noticed this in a very, very serious way, and you've probably also figured out or wondered how you're going to address this, because this seems to be something that is increasing. The divide seems to be increasing. So let's ask the question first: what is the AppSec divide? And with that, we need to go back a little bit to how AppSec has been run traditionally in organizations. Now, traditionally in organizations, you would see that AppSec would be part of a central security team, if you will, and that security team was in charge of handling AppSec as well, which means that they would be in charge of doing things like pen tests and vulnerability assessments and code reviews and in charge of running SAST programs and so on and so forth. And by the way, that still happens. It's not that those practices have gone away or something like that. It's still a very common, in fact, probably the most predominant part of this particular process. And you will see that this team was involved in getting AppSec done through developers, doing a little bit of threat modeling, doing a little bit of configuration review, risk management, and so on. Now, this would be the typical pattern of how AppSec is run until we've suddenly thrown this massive wrench in the works, which is the cloud native space. Now, as soon as cloud and cloud native have entered the discussion and entered the equation, we have suddenly seen a massive divide that has happened in application security, simply because now, along with the whole AppSec problem, you're also dealing with an ops problem, because cloud and cloud native is really a DevOps problem. And suddenly, AppSec has now been thrust into the role of having to deal with not only AppSec related issues, but also DevOps and DevSecOps related issues. Now, you would be wondering, Abhay, what are you talking about? DevSecOps has been there for a while now. Yes, again, largely in the AppSec silo. If you look at DevSecOps, it's largely been about, hey, how do you automate this SAST or DAST or SCA and SBOMs and stuff like that. But today, DevSecOps really has to extend to the whole SDLC, if you will, especially to the point of how are you going to securely deploy your workloads on the cloud? How are you going to manage security on the cloud? How are you going to give a paved road for your developers and your cloud engineers to handle this? So all of these things has become part of that great new divide. So not only has the job gotten much larger in scope, it's also gotten more complex. And it's gotten complex simply because this is a completely new thing that we're dealing with. We have not previously dealt with these problems at scale. We have not dealt with having to deal with cloud security at scale, or Kubernetes security at scale, or Kubernetes security on cloud security at scale. So we're seeing this divide increase quite a bit because there is this new set of problems to deal with, and unfortunately, the skills to address these problems is always in short supply. You don't have enough people dealing with these problems, especially from a defensive angle, to deal with these problems. And that is something that a lot of product security leaders, AppSec leaders, CISOs are really starting to worry about. How do we solve this problem? Right? How do we address this AppSec divide? The second reason I think the AppSec divide has gotten larger, again, owing to the first point I mentioned about cloud and cloud native security, but the discipline we put in when we build apps itself. Now, a lot of times in the previous world, when we used to do a lot of standard on-prem or standard server style deployment, you could get away with a little bit of indiscipline because there was the development and the whole engineering practices were not that kind of velocity. You're not dealing with that kind of velocity. Today, indiscipline in this particular process has much larger impacts on security. This was very clearly summed up a couple of weeks ago when people started talking about why microservices suck and monoliths are great and so on and so forth. I largely attribute any problems related to all of these things to discipline, because the problem with engineering teams is when they are disciplined, they are able to adapt to additional things like security and other requirements as well a lot more faster, quicker, and they're able to collaborate because they are disciplined and they incorporate security into this discipline, or they've probably already incorporated security into this discipline. But when teams are indisciplined, and a lot of teams are indisciplined, this is, in fact, that would probably be the rule rather than the exception. When teams are indisciplined, it has a much larger AppSec problem in terms of the new way we deliver applications. So AppSec has gotten the divide between application delivery and application security is much larger, because application delivery is going at a breakneck speed. They're using new products, they're using new development frameworks, they're using new tools, but they're really not thinking about security. So they're just going hammer and tongs trying to figure this out, whereas AppSec has just not been able to catch up. So this divide has gotten worse, and of course, owing to skills and other cloud native issues, this has again gotten much more complicated as well. The third thing that I think has led to this issue is the versatility problem. Now, previously, developers were just developers, and security folks were largely just security folks, either doing validation activity or pen testing or review activity and so on. Today, developers also need to have a great deal of security expertise, especially because they're deploying workloads on the cloud. They need to understand cloud security. They need to understand Kubernetes security. They need to understand DevSecOps to a certain extent. They need to understand CI security. They need to understand supply chain security. There is a lot more that developers have to understand. While, yes, you could do things like have security faults in paved road and things like that, still the knowledge that the developer needs to have on security related areas has gone up quite a bit. And at the same time, the security folks who had previously not really integrated in any kind of developer workflows have now suddenly started a need where the security folks need to have a very deep embedded access to understand how developer workflow works. They need to understand how do developers build code and how you can embed security into that process, or what kind of repositories do they use. Do they use a monorepo or a multi-repo? Do they use infrastructure as code for continuous deployment, or do they not? Do they use GitOps for this kind of deployment process, or do they not? How do they use secrets management? These are some of the big issues that security folks have started to see as well. This already existing, but I think growing in focus, a discipline called security engineering. And developers and security folks are grappling with this because neither of them are currently equipped to deal with this problem. Neither of them are currently equipped to fully understand the scope of this problem and deal with this problem in a way that harmonizes security for the entire engineering team. So these are some of the issues that I see with the current AppSec divide. And I'm going to look at some recommendations that I think has worked. And I've seen this work with my own customers and my own clients. I've seen this work across the board with them. So I'm going to give you some tips to address this in a pretty meaningful and hopefully comprehensive way. Now let's talk about solutions for the AppSec divide, because this is a problem, and I think this problem is not going to go away. It's only going to get more and more pronounced as things go along. Now, the first thing that I want to call out is a very opinionated take here, which is that training is woefully inadequate and ineffective in organizations. This is something that I've seen every organization suffer from. They assume that, okay, having some kind of basic secure coding training for developers and having some kind of basic security training, technical subjects for security folks is going to make a difference, and they think the problem goes away. Secure coding only teaches a developer how to write more secure application code. It does not even come close to addressing some of the real issues that you have with the AppSec divide today. You want developers to understand not only secure code, but how they can use or deploy secure workloads, understand container security, understand DevSecOps, understand cloud security to a large extent. These are indelible parts of the job, and it's important to go beyond secure code training or software security training or software security engineering training. They need to understand multiple parts. They may not have to be security experts, but they need to know it well enough for them to be able to understand the risks, appreciate the risks, and take actions to avoid these risks. So whether it be developers or whether it be security engineers, the training that I feel today that is being delivered to these folks is woefully inadequate. Secure coding just doesn't cut it. You need to go beyond it to more defensive, at the same time more comprehensive training that focuses on all the challenge areas that you're dealing with, which includes cloud security, which includes DevOps, which includes secure coding, of course, and maybe includes other aspects of risk management like threat modeling and so on. This is important, and this is the need of the hour. And if you don't do this, you will find yourself basically taking a lot more time and going through a lot more effort in actually getting to your goals than otherwise. So definitely think about this. And this is, I think, the first thing that you have to keep in mind. Now, the second thing is something that I see a lot of people talking about, but few organizations really doing well. And I'm talking about a security champions program. Security champions is a great idea. It's a great concept, and it definitely is great on paper. However, people do a terrible job of security champions. They don't get them the right training and tools. They don't incentivize people enough. They don't address the real problem in the room, which is how do you get your security champions to promulgate all this knowledge to other people? So again, it comes down to running a more effective security champions program with the right defined and measurable outcomes. You need to make a security champion empowered to get things done within their engineering team, within their particular unit. The third thing is, again, increasing security engineering as a discipline. You can't stop the need for security engineering. So when you can't beat it, you definitely should be joining it, and joining it hard. What you should be doing is working with engineering teams to build security engineering as a practice area within that particular team. This can be done through training, this can be done through champions, this can be done through however you want to do it. But you should be building security projects as part of that engineering team. Some of the best run technology companies do this, and they do this really well. So you should be taking a leaf out of that book and trying to bring in a culture of security engineering into an engineering team. Because remember, engineers love to solve problems. You need to hook into that mindset and get them to work on security engineering challenges that will help them create that paved road, create those security defaults that they don't need to think about later on. Either writing a wrapper library around an existing insecure library, or creating some kind of guardrails with their cloud security deployment, or leveraging existing open source tooling within their environment to ensure that they have cloud security practices or DevOps practices or DevSecOps practices in place. All of these things can help supercharge your application security program and bridge that divide by quite a bit. In conclusion, the AppSec divide is real. It is causing, especially with the coming of cloud and cloud native and proliferation of all these things, this is becoming a bigger and bigger problem. If you have to stem the tide of the AppSec divide, you have to address this comprehensively in the form of all these three things or more. Definitely reach out to us or me if you have any questions. That's what we do at V45 and AppSecEngineer. This is what we help in. This is essentially our area of focus. So definitely come to us if you have any questions on how you can bridge your own version of the AppSec divide. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in another one. Thanks so much.